What if the most influential sermons your family has ever received were never preached from a pulpit? What if they were streamed through a television screen? Stories bypass every defense you have. They make you feel something before you think, and once you feel it, the belief quietly follows. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart above all else, for everything you do flows from it." This video is not about guilt, not about canceling movies you love. It is about one question: what is the story actually teaching us to celebrate? One film on this list does not just redefine love or freedom, it redefines God Himself. And most viewers walk away thinking they just watched a beautiful adventure. Stay with me. Before we start, write this in the comments as a genuine prayer. Lord, give me discernment, not a performance, a real request. We start with something gentle, a film beloved in Christian homes, beautiful music, stunning animation, and a story about sisters that genuinely moves people. What if that same film quietly taught an entire generation of children that freedom means answering to no one? The movie is Frozen, and Frozen has real strengths worth naming first. The love between the two sisters is genuinely moving. The film ultimately shows that real love is sacrificial rather than romantic, which is a welcome message in children's cinema. But the centerpiece of the film and the song every child knows by heart tells a different story. Let It Go is a declaration of complete self-liberation. Elsa rejects every constraint, every relationship, every responsibility that asked her to live for anyone but herself. She builds a palace of isolation and calls it freedom. And the film frames this as her truest, most authentic self, finally breaking free. Luke 9:23. "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." The film says freedom means self-expression. Jesus says freedom means surrender. Those are not the same destination. The most powerful messages are rarely spoken out loud. They are sung, repeated, absorbed until they feel obvious. Millions of children have sung Let It Go as a personal anthem without anyone pausing to ask what it was declaring. If that feels like a subtle shift, this next film takes the same idea and packages it for adults with extraordinary music and an inspiring story of a dreamer who built something out of nothing. The movie is The Greatest Showman, and there is genuine goodness here. The film celebrates people who have been overlooked and says they deserve to belong. That resonates because it echoes something true about the heart of God. But watch what the film quietly does with ambition. P.T. Barnum's relentless pursuit of fame, wealth, and the approval of those who will never fully accept him is presented as inspiring rather than cautionary. His ambition causes real harm to the people he loves most. The film briefly acknowledges this. Then it rewards him with everything he was chasing anyway, and the audience cheers. The world view beneath the story is this: the ache for significance and greatness in the world's eyes is a hunger worth feeding rather than surrendering. Matthew 16:26. "What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul?" The film never slows down long enough to sit with that question. It is too busy celebrating the gain. The next time you watch it, notice what the film applauds in its final moments. That applause reveals exactly what this story truly values. Now we move from ambition to purpose. This next film is popular with believers specifically because its themes feel deeply right: adventure, meaning. Stepping out of a small, invisible life into something larger. The longing this film speaks to is real. God placed it there. The film is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Walter has been living a diminished version of his life. He begins to take risks, travel, and discover the world. The journey is genuinely moving. Something in it speaks to every person who has ever wanted to matter and to live fully. But watch where the film sends that longing. Every answer is horizontal: more experience, more risk, more self-discovery. There is no God in this story, no upward accountability, no calling that comes from outside yourself. The film presents a complete theology of self-actualization, with no room for a creator. Colossians 1:16, all things were created through him and for him. The desire to live meaningfully is not a secular desire. It is a sacred one. God placed it there so it would lead you to him. This film takes that holy longing and points it at experience rather than the one who placed the longing there. The danger is never the desire itself. The danger is where the story tells you to take it. This next film is one of the most critically acclaimed of the past generation. Gorgeous visuals, extraordinary music, a love story that feels genuinely honest about the tension between dreams and relationships. And that ending, the one that stays with you long after the credits roll. The film is La La Land. Both main characters ultimately sacrifice their relationship for their individual careers and dreams, and the film does not present this as tragedy. It presents it as the mature, correct, even beautiful choice. The look they exchange at the end is not grief. It is quiet acceptance of a necessary cost. Philippians 2:3-4. In humility value others above yourselves, each of you looking to the interests of the others. La La Land is one of the most beautifully made arguments for individualism ever put on screen. It tells viewers that personal calling and self-fulfillment are the highest goods a life can serve. That relationships, however real and meaningful, must ultimately yield when they stand between you and your dream. It is presented so elegantly that it does not feel selfish. It feels like wisdom. It feels like maturity. That is exactly what makes it worth examining carefully. Now here is where the list shifts. We move from worldview and purpose into something more personal, into what we believe about love and covenant. This next film convinced millions of viewers that true love means following your feelings, even when following them means breaking a promise you already made. It is one of the most celebrated romantic stories ever put on screen. Viewers have wept over it for nearly 30 years. The film is Titanic, and there is genuine power here worth acknowledging. The tenderness between the two characters is beautifully rendered. The sacrifice in the final act is moving. James Cameron created something that reached people at an emotional depth very few films achieve. But here is what most believers have never stopped to notice. The central love story is built on an affair. Rose is engaged to another man. The relationship with Jack begins while she is in a commitment with someone else. And the film is constructed so skillfully that by the end, viewers are cheering for the affair and resenting the fiancé, a man whose greatest crime was expecting her to keep her word. The film says real love means following your heart. Scripture says love means keeping your covenant. Those are not the same destination. Hebrews 13:4. Marriage should be honored by all. 1 Corinthians 13 defines love not by the intensity of feeling, but by the faithfulness of action, patient, kind, not self-seeking, enduring. The romantic formula in Titanic has quietly shaped what an entire generation believes love is supposed to feel like. And when real relationships fail to produce that level of feeling, the film's logic whispers that the relationship itself must be the problem. That is worth sitting with, honestly. But what happens when a film does not just redefine love, but turns the entire spiritual journey inward and calls it growth? This next story follows a married woman who leaves her husband and her life to travel the world, searching for herself. She finds pleasure in Italy, spiritual awakening in India, and love in Bali. And every step of that journey is presented as healing, courage, and authentic living. The film is Eat, Pray, Love. And before we examine it, something needs to be said. The longing beneath this story is real. The ache to feel whole, to find meaning, to step out of a life that has gone numb into something more alive that is a genuinely God-given desire. It is not shallow, it is deep. But here is what makes this film worth examining carefully. The framework it builds for answering that longing has no room for a personal God. The spiritual journey in Eat, Pray, Love blends Eastern meditation, personal intuition, and self-guided seeking into what the film calls awakening. The voice of God in this story is always the voice of the self, heard more clearly as external obligations fall away. Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things. The biblical call is not to follow your heart deeper inward. It is to surrender your heart to the one who made it. The journey that leads to wholeness does not go inward. It goes upward and then outward in love toward others. Without realizing it, a viewer can finish this film believing that the truest spiritual journey is the one that leads deeper into yourself rather than to the cross. Now here is a film that hides its message beneath visuals so breathtaking that most viewers never think to question what they are actually being shown. It is the highest-grossing film in cinema history. Hundreds of millions of people have watched it. And its spiritual framework contradicts the opening chapters of Genesis in ways most viewers never notice, because the world built around that framework is simply too beautiful to examine critically. The film is Avatar. There is genuine wonder here worth acknowledging. The creativity is extraordinary. The themes of connection and belonging have real emotional resonance. But the entire spiritual system of Avatar is built on pantheism. The Na'vi do not pray to a personal god. They merge with Awa, a deity that is not above creation but is woven through it. The energy flowing through all living things. Spirituality in this film is not relationship, it is oneness, not prayer, merger. Romans 1:25. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator. The film presents this framework as ancient, wise, and spiritually superior to anything human civilization has built. And because it arrives through visuals that genuinely inspire awe, the theology enters quietly and feels not just beautiful but true. The next time you watch Avatar, ask yourself one question. Is the God being presented here someone you can know, speak to, and be known by? Or is he an energy you absorb? The answer matters more than the beauty of the world built around it. Now we come to a film that most Christian viewers have never thought to question, not because it is subtle, but because it is so warm, so funny, and so wrapped in music they already love that it never feels like it is saying anything serious at all. And that is exactly the point. The film is Pretty Woman. The story takes a woman in prostitution and frames her entire experience in the language of fairy tales, romance, glamour, and rescue by a wealthy man. The reality of what she is living never enters the frame. There are no consequences, no weight, no truth about what that life actually costs a person. 1 Corinthians 13:4-7. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking. The relationship at the center of Pretty Woman is transactional at its foundation, and the film teaches three things so smoothly most viewers absorb them without noticing. That sin has no real cost when the circumstances are glamorous enough. That a woman's value is determined by being chosen by the right man, and that love can be purchased and still be real. What the film calls romance, Scripture calls exploitation. The difference matters. And now, the final film, the one that may be the most effective of all at what it teaches, not because it is dark or controversial, but because it never once takes itself seriously enough to feel like it is teaching anything at all. This film is joyful, warm, funny, filled with music that generations have loved. Viewers finish it happy and recommend it to their daughters. And that joy is precisely what makes it worth examining with honest eyes. The film is Mamma Mia. The entire premise is built around a woman who had sexual relationships with 3 different men in a single summer and cannot identify which one fathered her child. This is not treated with any weight or consequence. It is played entirely for laughter, nostalgia, and warmth. The daughter responds with love, the men arrive with charm, the audience smiles from beginning to end. 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5. It is God's will that you should be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality. Here is the most important thing to understand about how this film works. The most effective way to normalize something is not to argue for it, It is to make it feel warm and inevitable and fun. To coat it in music people already love. To give it likable characters and beautiful scenery and an ending where everyone is happy. The most powerful messages are the ones we absorb while we are laughing. We are not on guard. We are not thinking critically. We are just enjoying ourselves. And that is exactly when beliefs are formed most quietly and most deeply. So where do we land after all of this? Not in guilt, not with a banned list, not in fear. We land with 3 questions. 3 questions worth carrying into every film from this point forward. What does this story say a good life looks like? What does it present as success, happiness, and flourishing? Does that picture align with what Scripture actually says life is for? What does this story say about who I am? What does it teach about freedom, purpose, and becoming? Does it point me toward my Creator or deeper into myself? What does this story say about God? Is He present in this world, personal, the one all human longing ultimately points toward? Or is He absent, unnecessary, or quietly replaced by something else? These questions are not designed to make you a suspicious or joyless viewer. They are designed to make you a discerning one. Philippians 4-8. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, think about these things. Discernment is not learning to fear culture. It is learning to love Christ enough to filter everything through His truth. Believers who develop that kind of vision are not diminished by culture. They understand it. They engage it, and they remain anchored in something no story can shake. Type this in the comments before you go. I choose discernment. Then share this video with one person in your life who wants to watch stories with wiser eyes. Subscribe to Secrets of Heaven. Every week we open these truths together. You are not navigating this world alone.